So glad to be back with you for another episode of Swami Live. Hope you've been having a fantastic weekend and week so far. Yeah, hold on, let me get here. Here we go. I'm gonna have to put some WD-40 on this chair. I move too much and it makes a whole sound effect for me. Again, family, so glad to be back with you for another episode of Soul Swami Live. I am Soul Swami. If this is your first time here, what we do here is discuss healing in all its various forms in an effort for us to, as we evolve to become the best version of ourselves. We create a collective energy with myself and you in the chat. That collective energy is a reminder that we are not alone in this process, and there are people who are also trying to become the best version of themselves. And we all understand that healing and evolution is a communal event. So we create a community that supports that through information, live energy readings, answering questions, exercises, all types of things that we do here to help us develop the tools or sharpen our tools that we have that will support our growth. We do this every Terrence, brother, glad to see you here, man. Side note, bro, and not that you need me to say it, but bro, I'm proud of you, man. If don't nobody else know, you know the man, appreciate it, bro. I feel like I ain't wore this shirt in a while, so I feel like bringing out my flowers again. But bro, I'm proud of you. Don't nobody else understand how difficult it is to be the best version of ourselves, man. You know the brothers do. So I'm always glad when you can show up. I always appreciate your support. So thank you for being here, brother. Uh, we do this show every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday is our more informative show, like tonight, and Thursday is a space where we reconnect with the childlike energy in us. So we do several different things. It started off as a book club, but it's evolved. So right now we're actually working on a puzzle and having a general open forum to ask questions about anything really in life. So mostly about our healing and our evolution, but really about anything in life. So generally, every week we do a little bit of energy work by focusing on a specific energy point in our body. And now we are on the root, right? So many people think the root is the gratitude, black man. Gratitude is the root is located as basically a tailbone, but for the most part and for our things, we'll put the root in our feet because our root helps us make a lot of decisions. If you are into color therapy, the color for your root is red. Hence the red tie, the red on my shirt, the red lights. So if you are into that, make sure you wear some more red, eat some red foods, spend some time in some red light. All of those things are very, very good for supporting the energy of your root. If you are into aromatherapy and essential oils, you want to think frankincense, myrrh, patchouli, black pepper, seasoned. Shake that on your food, right? So all of those are all good scents to activate the energy of your root. Oh, I almost forgot. The root is the focal point of your feelings of survival, your feelings of stability. Yeah. That's how you find yourself being an emotional runner. Your feelings of security, safety, and grounding. That's what, again, survival, stability, security, safety, and grounding. So that is why I say we make a lot of decisions. We vote with our feet, right? If you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think red jasper, garnet, bloodstone, black obsidian, black tourmaline. All of those are very good for supporting the energy of your root, right? Your survival, stability, security, safety, and grounding. The next thing we do is a little bit of sound therapy, and then we do some breath work, affirmations, and we get to the meat of the show. So during this time, all you really have to do is just relax, be mindful of your energy, and be mindful of your breath, and make sure you're trying to spend some of that energy of getting away the stressors of the day so that you can be ready to add to the collective energy of healing. So relax and listen to the sounds. Also brought out the rain stick today. Next, we do a little bit of breath work. Tonight, I feel like is a good night for 478. If you are unfamiliar with breathing exercises, the numbers usually tell you how long to inhale, how long to hold your breath, and how long to exhale. So for 478, we inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and release for 8 seconds. These breath work and breathing exercises are very good at stabilizing your energy. right? So whenever we're feeling a little overwhelmed or overstimulated, we can tap in with one of these breathing exercises to help stabilize that energy. During this time, all you really have to do is just listen to the sound of my voice, and I will guide us through the breath work. Be mindful of your breathing, be mindful of your thoughts, and the power that you have to reshape and transmute both of those things. On the count of three, we will start with 4, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last time, family. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the next thing we'll do is some affirmations. I just want you to, well, all you have to do is just repeat these affirmations after me and figure out ways to incorporate them into your life and your routines. Just like breath works, affirmations will help stabilize some of that energy and remind you of your value and worthiness in this world, how important you are to you and everyone else. Again, just repeat after me. I am safe and secure. I am grounded and centered. I am self-sufficient. I know that's right. I am financially secure. I love being in my body. I am safe and secure. I am grounded and centered. I am self-sufficient. I am financially secure. And I love being in my body. Love yourself. Love your body. Learn to love you through all the seasons of your life. Now we can get this party started. I got a little stuck. The breath work is generally hard for me to do with y'all because I'm doing a lot of talking. But the affirmations, I say them and feel them as I say them to you. So I got a little stuck on I am self-sufficient. Every week, not every week, but every several weeks, we wind up doing the root chakra again. And we say, I am self-sufficient several times. And it was the day that it kind of just hit me that I need to incorporate that more into my own routines. One thing that I've kind of been waiting on and putting a lot of pressure on myself and anxiety on myself is around this idea of a helpmate, right? And I definitely recognize in a lot of ways that I may need support or assistance. That's the word I was looking for. Support or assistance. And hey, man, I don't need you now. In ways that I may need support and assistance, and I low key don't take certain steps because I'm consciously and unconsciously trying to create this space where I need that support. So today, when I read and said I am self-sufficient, it kind of hit me in my gut where I have to recognize and understand that I am self-sufficient. All the things I need, all the things I need to do, all the things I want, all the things I want to do, I already have what is necessary to accomplish those things. I just need to apply the power of belief behind it. I need to believe that I already have these things. So belief is one of those things that can motivate motion, right? And get things going. So if you're feeling stuck, recognize that you are self-sufficient. And now, once you say that, apply the power of belief so that you understand everything that you need. You already have. This is your weekly reminder that you can purchase the 7 Spaces of Healing for yourself. It is a great foundational book to help you begin to conceptualize 7 pivotal spaces that you need to cultivate within yourself and make sure that you are a part of these spaces to support in your evolution and healing. The spaces of love, a space for healing, a space for solitude, a space for trust. Trust is be given, not earned. A space for risk without judgment, a space for accountability, and a space for forgiveness. All these spaces start with self. So you can purchase this book for yourself. It is available now on Amazon. 7 Spaces of Healing. So Swami. If you bought it, leave a review. Give me some review. You read it? Leave a review. Give me a review. Show me some love. Next, we'll get talking in our general conversation. Tonight, I forgot. We've been doing so much that I forgot to tell you. Tonight, we will be assessing how we function within our victim ego and understanding that you can have been a victim and still not become stuck in your victim ego. They do not go hand in hand. You can actually be victimized without getting stuck in your victim ego. Again, we remember the ego is a place or a thing that is there to support us and protect us. So we don't want to get rid of it. We want to understand it and utilize it. So last Thursday, if you caught Thursday's show, we were in real life. Now, I generally don't do a lot of stuff that's in real life. And when I'm at home, we are okay. Congratulations. I lose a lot of my in real life footage is when I'm on the road. I travel for work, but last Thursday we wound up being in real life, and it was a very interesting thing because what brought me out is a friend reached out to me, one of my homeboys, for longer than I care to remember at this point. He reached out to me and asked me to come out. We had a couple of friends who unfortunately lost their life on August 20th. Woo! A long time ago. But generally, every year he does something to honor their memory. And this year, he invited me out because all the people he know, I'm the one person that knows them too. You know what I mean? Not the only person, but I'm the one person that can understand what they meant to us. So he invited me out, and we had a good time, right? Uh, I wound up hanging out with some other friends, making some new friends, and we were just live, just having a good old time. It was funny because one of my friends was like they had to get off that live because we was having too much fun. And the funny thing is, I joke about this, and I mean no malice when I say that, but you know, some people they want to be in on the fun. So the fun is going on without them. They feel some kind of way. But we were having a grand old time, as they would say. And one of the reasons I'm talking about this relationship because this relationship with my homeboy is symbolic of relationships that stand the test of time. And it's funny because I've had to talk about this with two relationships from two brothers of mine, and they wound up being evident of relationships that stand the test of time. And when we say that we want relationships to stand the test of time, a lot of times we don't really understand what that means. But for me and these relationships, it means that our love for each other, our respect for each other, our admiration for each other, our value for the relationship has overcome any difficulties that we have had in our relationships. And it was funny because I got to meet my homeboy's woman, this lady, and she got to talking about how great it was to meet one of his friends that he has known forever, right? And that's where that idea, because as she pointed this out to me, and I was like, yeah, I was like, we definitely known each other longer than we haven't at this point. But our relationship has gone through seasons. We've definitely had our spring season where we were blooming and blossom. We had our fall where we was planting seeds, and we had our winter. One time we fell out for a couple of times. I really do think, and I not to say it I know because he's never said, I really do think that when I went to Milwaukee, that changed my homeboy's world. And when our world changes, we don't always know how to communicate that, which ties into the next thing. Um, we go searching for this sense of normalcy, right? And this idea of normalcy sometimes can get in the way of our healing and our evolution and our growth, right? Because what winds up happening is we wind up chasing this idea of normalcy, and we'll want it to be an event. I had a friend that asked a question online where this idea of normalcy and my relationship with my homeboy wound up feeling into this idea of normalcy. And we wind up not having realistic time frames on what normal is. And when we don't have realistic time frames on what normal is, we wind up not being able to recognize when what was normal is no longer our normal. We are under a new normal that we need to get used to, that we need to get acclimated with, that we need to understand, trust, and believe in. But we cannot see that new normal for holding on to the old normal. Perfect example, we see people still talking about COVID and what COVID was like, and how some people are still looking for a time where we lived and COVID didn't exist. They're trying to go back and still waiting on this normalcy when our new normal exists now. COVID changed the timeline for us. We live very different than we did now, than we did then, than we do now. And the quicker we are at accepting these new timelines, the easier the process of walking along that path becomes. And this is very important to me because as I want to talk to this about with you all, I recognize in my own life how I still have moments where I'm holding on to what I remember as good instead of accepting the new good that I have, right? And the ironic thing about this is we probably had signs and symbols to tell us a long time ago that we needed to move on from this old idea of what was normal. And because we didn't respond or we did not listen to those voices, our inner dialogue to tell us that it's time to move on, we force a cataclysmic event. Remember, positives, negative, opposites attract, but it requires a cataclysmic event to separate them. So as much as opposites attract, lights stay together, right? Remember that. Lights stay together. And we wind up trapping ourselves and forcing the universe and God or whoever we want to, or whatever we want to call it, into causing that cataclysmic event for us to make this change. For me, I'll give you the perfect one. It was me no longer working as an executive director. I just knew that was going to be my path for a while, even though deep down inside, I didn't even really want to do that. I wanted the money, but I did not want to do the work. I did not like the work. The work did not make me a better person. And then I wound up losing that job. And now I'm on a whole different path because I was more willing to accept the new norm instead of chasing after the old norm that I needed to move beyond. So I say this, and it's important that we give ourselves grace as we walk along this path and move towards a new norm, because it will not be an event. It is always a process. All right, so next we will review. Last week we talked about the moral ego. Moral ego. Before we get into the victim ego, we talked about the moral ego. Okay, I don't know what this is. Okay, cool. Moral ego. Moral or righteous ego. We call it either or. Moral or righteous ego. What is the moral or righteous ego? It is the part, again, we are dealing with identity-based egos. So it is the part of our identity that is built around being good, ethical, responsible, fair, virtuous, or even doing the right thing and or doing the right thing. A healthy moral ego helps us to live according to our values and act with integrity, and contribute positive to others, right? So integrity sticks out. I pause on that because, again, that is my word for this year. And it's been amazing all that integrity is teaching me. And one thing, the most important thing that it is teaching me is that idea of integrity goes way beyond I ever thought. I put it in the box because I thought I understood what integrity was. It's being the man of your word. That's it. But in learning more about integrity, I'm learning how integrity also incorporates things like accepting accountability, making a change. This, us healing and evolving, is an example of us living with integrity because we want to be better, right? So a healthy ego, a healthy moral ego helps us act with integrity and live according to our values. Now, if we are functioning with our moral ego a little unhealthy, that means we wind up being attached to being right, virtuous, or morally superior. We wind up judging ourselves and others very hard because of this, right? Attached to being right, virtuous, or morally superior. We wind up seeing this whenever we're trying to tell somebody about how they may have hurt us. And their defense is to prove why it's okay or why they was right, or they harp on their good intentions. That is a person that is functioning unhealthy within their moral ego, right? And when we don't live up to our moral code, we wind up judging ourselves extremely hard, or when someone we're attached to does not live up to our moral code, we wind up judging them extremely hard. Some of the questions we wound up asking ourselves around our moral ego was with goodness and identity, how we function within that. Things of how is it important for me to see myself as a good person? How important is it for you to see yourself as a good person? We looked at it in how we judge others. How often do I evaluate whether people are behaving badly? Do we like to assign that term of bad to people? It's easier to see with children. With adults, it's a little more covert. We are a little hesitant to say that's a bad adult. But when it comes to children, we will label them with that in a heartbeat, right? So that's a sign that you may be functioning within your moral ego in an unhealthy way. We looked at it in how we navigate being right when it comes to our moral ego. And am I more concerned with being helpful or morally right? We also looked at it in how we function within our ideas of guilt and responsibility. How does our moral ego function with guilt and responsibility? Do I carry guilt for things that may not be my responsibility? How many times have we taken on the burdens of others and now they're our burdens? As a matter of fact, I seen this woman talking online. She gave a perfect example of this. She talked about how in her life, she's never been cheated on. But when she gets on social media and the algorithm, they start showing her all these examples of how men cheat. And now she starts internalizing this as, yeah, they're right, they do cheat all the time, even though that is not her experience with men at all. Perfect example of that. How we wind up carrying things that are not our responsibility at all. We also looked at how we function within our moral ego as it relates to recognition, being seen and recognized, right? Do I secretly hope others notice how much I sacrifice, help, or care? Do you really want to be seen for those things, right? Good question. So tonight we will move into our victim ego. Quickly, as a reminder, if you want to see this, we did a whole series on victim ego. So you can go back to some of the previous. If you missed some episodes, every episode from day one, I think they might have missed day one. I think they might have got episode 2. It's on YouTube. So YouTube, you can go back to the very beginning from when I was sitting. Woo, we have grown a lot. Let's say that. When I was sitting at a white folded table on an ottoman, just trying to live in my purpose, right? So quickly, the victim ego is a part of us where we build our identity around being wronged, hurt, overlooked, misunderstood, betrayed, or those moments where we felt powerless, right? And to be able to have the self-awareness to recognize which one of these are we functioning in. Overlooked, hurt, misunderstood, betrayed, are those moments we felt powerless, right? If we are functioning healthy within our victim ego, again, you can actually be a victim without getting stuck in your victim ego. So we all have a victim ego because we all have experienced some sort of victimization in some form or fashion in our lives. And many of us deal with that, release those emotions, and move on. So, but if we are functioning within our victim ego in a healthy way, we recognize when we have been hurt. We seek support. We establish boundaries or reshape our boundaries, and we heal. Again, when we are functioning within our victim ego in a healthy way, we recognize when we have been hurt. We identify that. We are accountable for that hurt. We label that hurt, right? We then seek support because healing is a communal event. It is not something that we are supposed to do alone. So we seek support, we establish boundaries or reshape our boundaries. And boundaries are very different than walls. Boundaries can be invisible and unseen. Walls block us from seeing out and those from seeing in. We establish those boundaries and we heal. We heal. We find a way to release. If we are functioning in an unhealthy way with our victim ego, we become attached to the wound. The wound becomes our identity. It becomes who we are. And we begin to see life primarily through the lens of blame, helplessness, unfairness, and sense of powerlessness that we felt. We begin to see life through the lens of blame, helplessness, unfairness, and sense of powerlessness. Many of us are stuck in our victim ego from something that happened to us as a child. And when we see things that happen, we quickly try to find blame. And usually that blame is outside of ourselves. Someone else did this to me. Someone else caused this for me, right? We get stuck in our feelings of unfairness. If someone has to tell you, well, life ain't fair, that is true. That is not to disprove what you are saying. That is to give you an understanding that fairness is something that you have created. This idea of fairness. And once you created that idea of fairness, you've unfortunately or unintentionally collapsed all the other possibilities. Sometimes life is unfair. Sometimes they get 2 pieces of crackers and you get one, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you have to see life as though it's unfair. You just have to recognize that, right? So, to ask some questions, we'll start with our victim ego and how we function within hurt and injustice. Hurt and injustice. First question: do you frequently focus on how others have hurt, disappointed, or betrayed you? Do you frequently focus on how others have hurt, disappointed, or betrayed you? Excuse me. Now, frequently is up to you, but be real with yourself. Because frequent can be every day or when an event arises, which can be monthly, weekly, yearly, every couple of years, right? So establish what frequently means to you. But do you frequently focus on how others have hurt, disappointed, or betrayed me? For myself, that's a layered response. So I guess I do have to say frequently, because at first I was getting ready to say not necessarily frequently, but it's often enough where it pops in my mind. I think about it's harder for me to let go of disappointment than it is with hurt and betrayal. Because I think about some of the people I had relationships with, and in my mind, I had a destination for these relationships. And because I didn't reach that destination with that relationship, I feel disappointment. And occasionally, when I'm alone or I'm doing something that reminds me of that relationship or the feelings I felt, that disappointment arises, right? Now, over the years, that disappointment has calmed down some. Before, it would evolve into anger, frustration, and a host of other emotions. But now we've exercised our skill of being able to acknowledge and sit with the emotion. Now, when it arises, I think about it, I'm able to sit with it, and I transmute it. So, of those things, the one that kind of sticks with me and harder for me to move beyond is the feelings of disappointment. What about you? Do not be afraid to put your comments in the chat. Share. This is about us, family. Share. How frequently do you focus on how others have hurt, disappointed, or betrayed you? I see that in people's actions all the time. As a matter of fact, the example I gave with the woman saying she's never been cheated on, but when she gets on social media, everybody talks about how they've been cheated on, or so many people. The people who have been cheated on are very vocal. They will spill their hurt all over everything. And social media allows us to get that hurt. They spill it all in our lives. They want everybody to know. And that's because they are stuck. They frequently focus on how they've been hurt or betrayed, right? Next question. How often do you replay painful experiences from your past? How often do you replay painful experiences from your past? That's the same as with the disappointment. Um, Often and frequently is very debatable. But the fact that it shows up is hard for me to debate. I do think about it. And over the last couple of years, I've done a great job, or even us, we've done a great job together at letting go a lot of painful experiences, releasing those and not just moving beyond them, but we actually release the feelings, the emotions, the anger, the frustration, the disappointment, the hurt that we felt around those things. So it makes it easier for us to move beyond. But I definitely still think about some of the hurts that I have experienced, right? Because once we learn these tools to navigate life, that does not absolve us. It does not mean that we will not experience these feelings anymore. We just have the tools to be able to navigate the feelings, release them, and move beyond them, even if they show up again, which they do, because these stories are our lives. We cannot run from ourselves. So these thoughts and these experiences have helped to shape who we are. So they show up again. I definitely think about, as a person who valued marriage, only wanted to do it once, I definitely think about the times that I have asked people to marry me and it did not get to there. I think about it. And there's one person I definitely think about a lot. And at times, when I think about that, it's hard for me not to place blame on that person for them changing their yes to a no, right? So, with that, all honesty, those painful thoughts or painful experiences do show up. Now, not as many as before, because again, we've released a lot of them, but some of those experiences that are still close to one of the goals that I have for myself show up. So a goal that I have for myself is to be married, start a family after marriage. So the feelings or the hurts or disappointments or painful experiences I had around this idea of marriage will show up. Even when I think about other people, like I definitely think about how my mother was married 4 times, my father married 3 times. And that's what that example is. We wind up carrying other people's things that we're not responsible for. My father is responsible for not keeping his vow that he made to his wife, to his woman, and before God. My mother is responsible for the vow that she made. No matter how many she justifies it, no matter how many times he justifies it, all of that is also an example of integrity. They wind up showing up, those experiences that are still close to goals that I have not achieved yet. Whether your goal is something like graduating, getting a college degree, things that happen around that, it's easy to bring up that pain or those painful experiences. So, how often do you replay painful experiences? Next question. Do you find yourself thinking things like life isn't fair or people always do this to me? Do you find yourself thinking that life isn't fair or people always do this to me? Well, we know, I definitely think that life isn't fair. I literally just told you all life is not fair. Life is not about fairness. It is more about reciprocity. It is about give and take. And sometimes giving isn't fair, just like sometimes taking isn't fair. So I find myself thinking that life isn't fair. But that is not one of the thoughts I think often. It is not one of the thoughts I think when I experience that unfairness. It is an understanding that I have about the duality of life, right? So you can think some of these things without them becoming your identity as well, where you move and navigate and process experiences through a lens of life is not fair. because I recognize that at some point, life is definitely going to be very, 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 very much fair for me, which makes it a little easier for me to accept those moments when it is unfair. I've had several battles within my life around this idea of people always do this to me, especially when the trauma or the painful experience is fresh. As I've gotten a little older and I've gained more tools, it isn't as prevalent as a thought. But I definitely think of when I was younger, when I was a child or a teen or a young adult. How many times that I actually had to have this conversation within myself where I have to remind myself that people don't always do this to me. We just have a tendency to focus on the negative experiences more than we do the positive experiences. That's when they say, like, you can say 10 positive things, but the people will remember the one negative thing that you did say, right? So many times in my life, when the experience was fresh, I've had this disagreement, this internal battle, this fight amongst self to not have a mindset of people always do this to me, because they don't. And when that thought comes in my mind, I'm quick to remind myself that that's not true. That's not true. Do not let the pain that I feel for this situation color the way I see my life. Many of good things have happened. Do you think life isn't fair or people always do this to me? I hear that a lot in the work that I do. And I have to remind people, people don't always do this to you. Give yourself some grace and give people some grace. Next question. Do I feel misunderstood or unappreciated much of the time? Do you feel misunderstood? You feel like people don't get you? Or unappreciated? People don't see you much of the time. Do you feel misunderstood or unappreciated? So for me, I feel misunderstood sometimes, but not much of the time. Because for myself, I don't navigate life, or I don't go out in this world trying to be understood. I go out in this world trying to get understanding, right? I want the understanding to navigate and see people through a lens of understanding, which also became a gift and a curse. I had to reshape my relationship with understanding, because at one point I accepted understanding to also mean acceptance. But now I understand, just because I understand doesn't mean I have to accept it. So I really don't navigate life with feelings of being misunderstood, because I really feel like those who get me, get me. Those who don't, don't. And some of those who don't will at some point. There's a time and place for everything. And understanding comes at a time and a place. Now, when it comes to unappreciated, I definitely wouldn't give it much of the time, but it is definitely something that's extremely contextual, right? There's feelings of unappreciation. And how I recognize that is how often I want to be seen. I want to be seen for the work I do, the value I bring. I want to be appreciated. That's it. I really do. I really do want to be appreciated. And I recognize when appreciation isn't there. I'm not blind to that, right? And I also recognize that not everybody is going to be able to see what I see. And most importantly, I had to tear down my walls so that people could see me, right? One of the reasons we are unappreciated or we don't feel seen is because we've built barriers, blockades. We aren't vulnerable enough for people to see who we are. When we sacrifice, now we worried about not speaking on our sacrifice, not making our sacrifice our identity, not talking about it. But sometimes we do have to clearly say what we sacrifice so people can begin to understand. In our efforts to be strong or seen as strong, we also make ourselves seem superhuman. So people will think we always got it together, even when we know that we do not. Next, we'll look at it in terms of responsibility and blame. Responsibility and blame. When something goes wrong, where does my attention go first? To what others did to me or how I can respond? This is a good question because it kind of ties into a conversation the brothers had last night, right? And one of the brothers asked about how do we basically begin to control our emotions and our responses, right? And one of the things that I said that helps me in this process is that I stop focusing on what they did to me and I start focusing on me, how I can respond. The one thing I can control is my responses, my actions, my thoughts. So I really do try to turn it on how can I respond. Now, me saying that, that is evidence of growth because I definitely spent a lot of my life being reactionary and impulsive and blaming that reaction and impulse on what they did. Well, they shouldn't have did this with a certain hubris and pride that I know I'm right because if they didn't do that, they wouldn't have experienced this. Funny, I dated this girl for literally a week. And in that week we ain't talk because their phone was off or something weird was going on. And after we broke up, we stopped talking for a minute and we got back together. And the wild thing about that is when she talks about that moment, she blames me. And she said it's my fault because I should have never asked her to be my girlfriend when she had so much going on. In my mind, you always got a bunch going on. Your life is always chaotic. So there is no perfect time. Only time I've seen this person's life not be chaotic is when they had a man. A man brought stability to their life. So, but that ties into that idea where instead of her being able to focus on what she did and how she responded, the pain and the guilt she felt from how she responded way too much that she had to turn that on me. Right? That's an example of that, where you cannot accept what you have done, your responses, especially when those responses that have caused pain to someone else, especially when you think of yourself as a good person. It becomes easy to make it about them when it's really about you. Next question. Do I or do you spend more time explaining your circumstances than changing them? Do you spend more time explaining why it's like this instead of changing it? Which do you do? For myself, I do a little bit of both. And I allow myself the space to be able to identify and explain my circumstances. But when it comes to a point, I have to change them. I was talking to one of my coworkers today, and they were telling me about a man who's almost 50 years old and still struggling to keep a job and all these things. And I was like, man, at some point, we're too old to be going through young people problems. Leave that instability to 20-year-olds. That's the point in their life where they're supposed to experience it, right? And for myself, at some point, I stand up and say, hey, this can't be life. Something has to change. Hence, that's how I wound up in Milwaukee. I knew something had to change. I just didn't know what. That's how I wound up here with you all. I knew something had to change. And I knew I would never go back on that path that I was on. I gave myself no option but to change. So I have a tendency to do a little bit of both. But ultimately, I reside in a space of change because I want to experience my piece of heaven on earth. I'm not waiting till I die to experience glory. When we can experience all the greatness right now, breathe the air, taste the food, drink the drinks, we can do all that right now. We just have to be willing to make some changes. So, do you spend more time explaining your circumstances? Matter of fact, when I was with the brothers last week, we started talking about one of our other brothers, and that's his problem. He always, and of course, part of that explaining his circumstances is a manipulation tactic, is so that everybody can see him as a victim. But he is a victim of his own choices. And he will repeatedly, one of the reasons we had this conversation is because my brother be struggling to keep a job because of some court stuff. Somebody give him an opportunity and he won't show up for work. Wow. And then if you talk to him, he'll give you all the reasons on why he ain't show up for work. But he's not willing to make a change yet. Do you know people like that? You dig? I'm sure we do. Next, we will think about how our victim ego functions with our feelings of powerlessness. So, first question. Do you tend to wait for circumstances or people to change before you can be happy? Do you wait for circumstances or people to change before you can be happy? I know there are people, and people will tell you this, especially like if you don't got no job or you ain't got no money, you don't deserve to be dating, you shouldn't be dating. They are forcing you to live in a victim mindset. That idea, if you say that to yourself, you are forcing yourself to live in a victim mindset because your happiness should not be attached to how much money you have, or if you have a job, or if you have a girlfriend, or What I talked about earlier, this idea of self sufficient. I'm waiting for circumstances to change before I can experience the happiness of a family. Are you thinking that there's a better time, or I just got to get this done and then I can experience happiness? I just got to get my kids out of the house and then I can be my own person. I just got to get a new job and then I can be happy. I just got to get a relationship and then I can be happy. Are you waiting for circumstances or people to change before you can be happy? If only they just stop doing that, then I can be happy. If only they change that behavior, then I can be happy. That is one of the things where I talked about relationships being able to stand the test of time. People may not change. They might be exactly who they are the entire time. And it requires you to change because you have attached too much of your joy and your happiness on what someone else does, and absolve yourself of any accountability for your actions, your thoughts, and the emotions that are there, and responsibility, because you do not want to make that change. Do you tend to wait for circumstances or people to change before you can feel happy? Comments in the chat. Answer riddle me this. Next question. Do I feel stuck and uncertain about what to do next? Do you feel stuck but uncertain about what to do next? Now, at some point, we all feel a little stuck. That's why that space of solitude comes in handy, because we do need to spend some time within ourselves so we can have some clarity on what to do next. Not certainty, but clarity. Because even when we're certain, we can still be wrong. We do not need to have all of the answers before we do that, right? We can just know part of the answers or have none of the answers at all. We're just going to make an effort and take a chance, a risk without judgment. You dig? Do you feel stuck and uncertain about what to do next? Honest. If you can't be honest with yourself, you can't expect people to be honest with you. The way you like to be treated, you have to start with self. Next, we'll look at our victim ego and our emotional patterns, how our victim ego functions within our emotional patterns. Whew. Excuse me. Do I frequently experience resentment or bitterness? Do you frequently experience resentment or bitterness? Honest, vulnerability, truth. For myself, I really don't experience bitterness because I make changes. A lot of the things that would make me bitter, I'm not even on that timeline. I'm not even walking that path anymore. So there's no need for me to feel bitter, right? I'm not taking out my pains on others. I'm not allowing my experiences to define me. For example, I've had somebody tell me yes and then no to marriage. That don't mean I'm not gonna ask somebody else to marry me. I'm not gonna be stuck in my bitterness because of what they did, right? Now, I have my moments of resentment. I will resent your ass in a heartbeat. One of the reasons I think about that person, or I use that example of the time I asked someone to marry me and they said no, is because of resentment. And occasionally, the thought, how I know it's resentment, is because the thought is, I could have been this if you had been that. So I could have been a family man if you would have been confident enough and thought that you deserve a family, that you were worthy of love. So there was some resentment that no matter how much I showed them love, told them love, they still didn't think that they were worthy of it. And their decision affected both of us. So that's where the decision, where the resentment comes into play. Because it wasn't my decision, but I'm still affected by it. And I'm like, yo, you really didn't consider me in that decision. And maybe they did. Just their actions don't reflect that. So resentment can stem around this idea. I struggle with resentment. One of the things, and I didn't recognize it, but it came to the surface, and I can be vulnerable and accountable and responsible for that. But it started where I started pulling that layers back of resentment in my Reiki class. I took that hape, started crying, and could not stop crying. I was like, yo. And the more I tried to stop myself from crying, the more I cried. And as the people consoled me, one of them said, you can forgive your mama. And I thought she was crazy. Because I was like, me and my mama cool. But at that point, I have not identified my resentment that I had, because I wasn't accustomed to making space for my emotions. I was accustomed to moving beyond them. I don't have time to get slowed down for my emotions. So I'm just putting rocks in my bag, carrying all these rocks alone and not putting any of them down. And those rocks become the foundation for resentment. So, do you frequently experience resentment or bitterness? Do you frequently experience resentment or bitterness? Next question. Do I hold on to old hurts for a long time? Do you hold on to old hurts for a long time? Yes. Even at some point, those hurts became my identity. I started moving as a person living under that hurt. Now, when we say this, you can remember the experiences, you can remember how it changed you without holding on to the hurt. You know you're holding on to the hurt, or when you think about it or you talk about it, all that hurt feeling comes into play. One of the disagreements I had with a member of my family was around this idea. Their mom died when they was a kid. And to this day, they cannot have one conversation about their mom without immediately crying. You can't even get to the truth of the emotions of what they felt because they get so overwhelmed because the hurt they felt then is still as powerful today. So for me, I hold on to the experiences, but I try not to hold on to the pain because I do not want to see myself as a victim. I want to see myself as a human that experienced life, as a man that experiences life, good, bad, and indifferent. So I try to separate the hurt from the experiences. Now, of course, this is a process that's still growing, and many of you are probably still growing in that too, separating the hurt from the experiences. Next, do I struggle to forgive others or release past experiences? Do you struggle to forgive others and release past experiences? Are you guising your inability to release with "I'm protecting my peace"? That has been the new cliche to remove accountability and absolve us from any responsibility. For myself, I struggle with this and I'm getting better. My problem isn't forgiving people, it's forgiving myself. Especially when I feel as though I should have known better. And I have to be mindful of when that inner dialogue comes into play. And I start getting hard on myself, like, man, you should have known better. Like, bro, knowing better does not mean that you will do something different than what you did. I can know better and still do it. I knew better than going to some of the clubs I went to when I was younger, knowing that they was going to start pop, pop, pop firing. But I still went anyway. Knowing better and doing better are two different things, right? So I get hard on myself, and I've been working to not be hard on myself because the forgiveness I just give others, I deserve myself. So I can forgive myself for the mistakes I made, some of the bad decisions, even the multiple times I made them with one person. Really, 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 really taking a lot of time to work on forgiving self-forgiveness. And I'm not hesitant, but I'm always curious when I meet people who don't forgive others. Because my thought process is what happens when it's time to forgive yourself. At least in a place where I forgive others before I give myself, I do have a roadmap of forgiveness. The same thing that I do for others, I just got to do for myself. Right? But when I deal with people who don't have forgiveness for others, I know they have no roadmap for forgiveness of self. So do you struggle to forgive others? or release past experiences. Last, not the last question, but the last section, we will assess how our victim ego functions within our identity. Victim ego and identity. And identity. Victim ego and identity. Hey, thanks, Dimitri. Glad you joined for a second. I appreciate you. Boom. Identity and our victim ego. Has victim become our identity? First question: how much of my self story is built around painful experiences? How much of your self story is built around painful experiences? Listen, when I got to that question, it was like a brick or a load just dropped onto me. Because I think about the stories that I tell people about my life and my experiences. And although I never really connected this to my identity, or even sometimes when I do recognize that I've connected it to my identity, I try to spin it in a way that these experiences have made me stronger without recognizing that I have allowed pain to become my identity. And you know, we talk about how the universe has no obligation to prove you wrong. It's more likely to prove you right. So by identifying with the pain or not being able to recognize that I identified with the pain has become my identity. I could not recognize that I was completing the cycle of inviting more pain in my life. That question made me to really, really think about the stories I tell. Some of the reasons that people tell me I needed to write a book, or you to tell me, they don't need to tell me no more. Okay, hello. You hear me? Is because of the wild and painful stories that I used to tell. I tell some funny ones, but a lot of my stories are wild. Like one story, and I've talked to you all about it, is the time that I got put on punishment for a year and a half. Or when people used to say I was determined to be a thug. I internalized those things and it became part of my identity. The question alone made me assess how I talk about myself to other people. And a lot of times I have intentions that are counter to what I'm actually doing. My intentions are I want them to know that I'm resilient, or I have some strength, some emotional strength. But when I tell myself story with only these things, then these things become my identity. So for you, when you talk about your life and you explain your experiences to others and who you are to others, do you tell a story that revolves around pain? Is your self story a painful story? Next question. If you stop talking about what hurt you, what would be left of your identity? If you stop talking about what hurt you, what would be left of your identity? Now that we've done so much work, a lot, we've worked to separate ourselves from our painful experiences. So for myself, a perfect example of that is if I stop talking about what hurt me, what will be left? I'd still be a teacher. Many of my teaching in the classroom experiences were great experiences. Even the difficult times. I still be a lover because in spite of my experiences, I never ever decided I wouldn't love. As a matter of fact, even when I thought that, I'd go to someone who would tell me, don't think that. I remember I used to have that conversation. I'd be so frustrated with love. And I'd go to my mama and I'd tell her my frustration with love. And she'd say something that was hard for me to argue with. She'd be like, well, you know, I'm the last person to tell you to give up on love. So that's a person who has experienced more than I have with love that still hasn't given up on love. So what do I look like trying to give up on love? Right? So if you stop talking about what hurt you, what would be left? Last question, family, and we'll wrap it up after this, is again, put the answers in chat. I know it's a tough questions, but you got to practice vulnerability. And right now, you can still be anonymous. No one will really know who you are. Last question. Do you primarily see yourself as someone who has been harmed rather than someone who is healing? Do you see yourself as someone who has been harmed rather than someone who is healing? For me, that answer is easy. I 100% identify as someone who is healing. And in that healing, I recognize how I've been harmed. But what the healing does is separate the experiences from the man I am. And healing gives me my power back. As long as I don't heal from it, the situation, the people, the places, the things still have my power. As long as you don't heal from it, you have effectively given your power away to the past. You have no presence, no present, and your future is jaded. Do you see yourself as someone who has been harmed versus someone who is healing? Good question, family. And hopefully, the soul family, most of you all, you might have some duality, right? You still might be in the process of separating your healing from your harm. But We all, in our collective energy, should view ourselves as someone that's healing. And when we see ourselves as someone that's healing, it makes it easier for us to discern like-minded individual. Game recognize game. So if I'm in the process of healing, I know someone else is. And when I see them, I will recognize them. They will look familiar because you and I both know the cost for healing is a very high cost. And a lot of times it requires you to sacrifice everything you've known to become everything you need to be. So when you've paid that cost, you can see in their walk, in their talk, in their smell, in their everything, someone else who is also paying that cost. If you got a house, you recognize homeowners. You got a car, you recognize car owners. Because we're all paying the cost to have those things. So those are physical and tangible things. It drills down to the untangible, the intangible things as well. Well, when we are on the path of healing, we recognize those who are walking the path with us. They become our tribe and they become our soul family. All right, family. That was the last question for tonight. This Thursday, we will be back in the home. No, in real life. Well, let me stop. Because I thought this last week too. And then I got a text on Wednesday. And I was like, I'm out there. I'm going to show up. My people need me. I don't care if I ain't talked to you in 10 years. If you need me, hit me. I'm going to show up. So, Intentions Thursday, we'll go back and build our Iron Man mask. I figured out a piece that I didn't figure out the last time we did the Iron Man mask. So, we'll go back into that. And if you can't make it Thursday, I hope to see you back here Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we will be assessing how we function within our spiritual ego. And that be the last of our identity egos. And it will wrap up our identity segment series, period. And again, we'll move on to declarations over our life. So we start being mindful of the things that we declare over our life. Like, I'm protecting my peace. You're protecting it because you haven't declared that you have peace, right? So you got to protect something that you don't think you got. All right, Thursday. Love to see you Thursday for open forum and puzzle building as we reconnect to that childlike energy within us. If you can't come in Thursday, I hope to see you back here again on Tuesday as we continue assessing our identity-based egos with the final of our identity-based egos, which is our spiritual ego. Spiritual ego. Family, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you adding to the collective energy of healing, growth, and evolution. And I value the work that you have been doing for yourself and sharing with others. I appreciate you again and living in a space of gratitude. I'm thankful for what you give to me, yourself, and others. And with that, I'll see you later this week or next week. And I wish you peace, family. Peace.